Hello everyone, this is Red Robot, and the terrible tactic we're looking at today is the Sentry Heavy. Now this is something I've been really wanting to try out ever since the Brass Beast got its little buff during the Gunmetal update. Now what happened to the Brass Beast was that it gained a 20% damage resistance while spun up, and that was really cool because I always felt that the Brass Beast was a weapon that, of course the downside is reduced movement speed and spin up time. But I really wanted to find a way to completely counteract that negative. And if you can, you've just got a plus 20% damage minigun. And now with the damage resistance, it's simply even better. You're not going to be able to get out the way to dodge anyway, so the damage resistance really comes in handy. Now you may be noticing that every so often I'm gaining 150 health. But it's because my friend Swift Cheese, as medic, is sitting back at spawn behind me, shooting crossbow bolts non-stop. Now one of the most amazing things about the crossbow is how much it can heal per second. It's got quite a slow fire rate, sure, but it fires in 150 health chunks at max range. The further away it is from you, the more health it will heal. So with my medic safely back at spawn shooting crossbows, and me up on this raised platform, safe from things like spies and people running at me from just straight at me, I'm able to tank a whole bunch of damage thanks to the damage resistance of the Brass Beast and deal out a ton due to the damage buff. And I've taken pretty much every downside of the Brass Beast, completely forgotten about it. Another thing that really makes this spot work is the fact that when you're standing up on this little raised plateau, you've got health respawning underneath you, you've got ammo respawning underneath you. I didn't realize this until later on, but you can fire pretty much non-stop from up here, and that will completely remove Heavy's decreased accuracy and when he begins to fire. One important factor to remember when you're using this spot on Payload Frontier is that it's really crucial where the cart is. Now, the cart right now is the perfect spot. Players are forced to walk out in front of me, I can mow them down and they'll deal reduced damage to me and I'll have a great time. But as soon as the cart reaches the second last point, a door behind me will open and I'll be completely exposed to fire from both sides and I won't be able to fight back in any meaningful way. So it's really only a spot that you can use while the cart is in this place. But that's kind of perfect because when you're here, they're not going to be able to push the cart very far anyway. So obviously the main concept is be like a sentry. Sit up here, deal really good DPS, and have really good regenerating health. So the only way enemies will be able to kill you is with a high amount of burst damage. Any kind of burst damage that can overcome the 150 heal of the arrows plus the damage resist of the Brass Beast. And that'll be pretty tricky to achieve. Obviously, one really big downside of being the Heavy Sentry is that a regular Sentry doesn't have a head, and the fact that Heavy has one makes him vulnerable to headshots. This would be the main way that I get cleaned out this game. It's possible to kind of avoid them more by sitting up more to the left, and I do move there later on, but it's frustrating not getting the reduced health and having to constantly spin up, spin down, spin up, spin down to come and get it. I really should have been pre-firing the sniper spot this whole time. The flinching might have messed him up, and a body shot is going to do pretty much nothing to me when I've got the regeneration that I have. One benefit of being a human instead of a sentry is that you take reduced damage from long-range weapons. Weapons such as the rocket launcher, shotguns, they're going to do less damage the further away they are, unlike with sentries that deal flat damage to them from weapons regardless. So a rocket's always going to do 90 damage for a sentry, regardless of it being fired from really far away or really close. And you can use this to your advantage because you can use this height and distance away from the cart to make sure your enemies can barely do anything to you while you just destroy them with your minigun. Oh, and if you're worried about spies taking you down, they can do the little jump puzzle on the rocks behind you to come up and backstab you. Don't worry because your medic is going to be constantly shooting at your back, so he'll see if anyone's about to pop out of nowhere to get you. One thing I really should have done, which I didn't have an opportunity to, was taunt and see how many needles there are sticking in my back. There would be a ton of them. My medic's done nothing but shoot me in the back this whole game, so there'd be a whole chunk of them sticking out. One big downside of the spot, as I'm demonstrating right now, is that sentries have auto-aim and humans don't. My tracking as Heavy is pretty abysmal. I'm really bad at tracking fast-moving objects. I know that for a Heavy in a competitive setting, tracking is super important. You have to be right on target all the time. I think my sensitivity might have been a little bit low to be really good at tracking with this weapon, but I'm sure I just need to practice more. Of course, it's possible for Heavy to shoot people outside his normal range, like a sentry couldn't, or you'd have to manually fire it with the Wrangler. The random crits every now and then that turn Heavy into a sniper don't hurt either. And we're about to highlight the next weakness Heavy has in comparison to a sentry gun, is that he is a human, so he's vulnerable to Sandman balls. I absorb a pretty ridiculous amount of damage in this time, and managed to just stay alive for a little bit before coming down, but I've dealt enough damage to the enemy team that we're able to push back and grab the win. Well, that's all I got for you guys right now, and I'll see you guys next time.